Good evening to all of you, and welcome to today's webinar. Welcome all the attendees from India and overseas who have joined today to listen to one of the very interesting speakers we have. The Singular is a unique learning platform that empowers the next generation to create real and responsible impact in the world by working with the technologies of the future. We teach exponential technologies to make our next gen better placed to solve global great challenges. We also have a B Singular's Exponential Leaders Club, which is a by invitation club only, comprising of a community of young dreamers who wish to work together to help change the world. We teach our courses in a phygital mode, so in physical classrooms as well as online. You can visit bsingular.com to check on the courses and how we actually go about teaching it. B Singular Social, which has put together these webinars, is a non-profit entity that has been launched by B Singular in collaboration with the Banyan, a leading child daycare center chain. Our objective at B Singular Social is to invest our resources and help foster exceptional educational experiences and learnings for the families. I have a pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Gina Scala, along with her colleague Kia. Gina is Stratasys Director of Marketing for Worldwide Education and Design, where she works to listen to the voice of the customer and translate that into meaningful marketing messages and product solutions that meet teaching and learning needs for schools and design firms. Prior to her role, she served as Vice President of Education and Professional Development at the Direct Marketing Association. And prior to DMA, she served as a Director of Marketing for global professional development company, Editior. In today's webinar, which is primarily focused on young minds, Gina will share the story of Stratasys when its founder invented one of the first 3D printing technologies over 30 years ago, and how it was called a silly and a crazy new idea at that time. So presenting to you all from B Singular Social, Gina Scala.
Thank you so much for joining me. I am just going to get my PowerPoint pulled up here. And if you can let me know if you can see it, Nitesh.
Yes, Gina, go ahead.
Great. So we're going to spend some time with you this morning or this evening talking to you about how 3D printing is changing the world. And how you can too. We're going to leave you with some really great tips and tricks for what you can do to get started with 3D printing, no matter if you're a student of 8 years old or a student of 80 years old. I'd first like to spend a minute and just introduce us as presenters. Thank you for the great introduction around me, but I have two other wonderful presenters joining me on the line. First, I have Kia. Kia, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Kia. I work with Gina at Stratasys. We work with a lot of students in education and design, like you guys.
Great. And I also have Limbitless Scala. She's my student presenter. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Limbitless Scala. I am a student at Lake Hiawatha School Elementary School in the USA.
Great. So we're going to take you through a journey. But before we do that, we're going to start with a math problem because everybody needs a math problem every day. So the little old lady in the right-hand corner is my oldest relative and Limbitless' oldest relative. She's 103 years old. And I want you to think about who your oldest relative is in your family. Think about that oldest living relative and take their age and subtract your age from that. So Limbitless would take her age 8 and subtract it from 103. So 103 minus 8. So take your oldest living relative's age and subtract your age, and then add the year 2020 to it. So that will give you a year. It might look like this for Limbitless.
Yes. So you would have to subtract 103 minus 8. You get 95, and then add 2020.
And we get the year?
2,
21,
21,
15. So think about the year that you got. Think about what you think the world might be like in 2115 or whatever year you got. What does that future look like? What do you think you'll be doing? What do you think you'll make? What do you think you'll be? And think, how can 3D printing help you shape that world? We're going to take you on a bit of a journey that's going to go through these 4 topics and leave you with tools to start your personal 3D printing journey if this excites you or interests you. So the 4 topics we're going to cover over the next about 40 minutes are 1, what is 3D printing? 2, where is 3D printing used?
How you start your 3D printing journey.
Yep, and then we'll take questions and answers at the end. So let's kick off with what is 3D printing, and I'll hand it over to Kia to talk you through this section. Go ahead, Kia.
Great. So what is 3D printing? We all know what printing is, so let's begin with the 3D part of 3D printing. 3D is short for three-dimensional. When you print a page on a printer, there's only 2 dimensions, the front page and the back of the page. But three-dimensional adds that 3rd dimension, which is volume. 3D printing uses a printer to create three-dimensional objects, for example, a cup or a doll or a phone case. So 3D printing is also known as additive manufacturing. It's the exact opposite of the traditional way of making objects. Instead of machining or subtracting material from an object, much like how a sculptor cuts away clay, 3D printing adds layer upon layer of material to build an object. So I want you to look at these 2 pictures. Which of these 2 do you think was 3D printed? The one on the left or the one on the right? So the one on the left was additive manufacturing. They were taking things away, and the one on the right was additive manufacturing or 3D printing. So
You got that right, Kia.
good, I'm glad.
Go ahead.
So it's additive. 3D printing is additive. Objects are created by adding or depositing layers of material, not subtracting or cutting out pieces from a block. So printer starts with nothing. It adds just enough material to create something like a whole bunch of layers or icing on a cake. It's digital, so because objects are created by adding layers, you need a computer file with details about your model or what you want to print, and then it'll be sliced up by the printer so that it can create layer by layer. Printing a three-dimensional object, it can take hours or days to complete, depending on how big your model is or how complex it is. And like a lot of things in the world these days, it's evolving. There's always new technology. So just like your phones or your games, 3D printers and 3D printing companies are always coming out with new printers and things with more features all the time. Pretty exciting to see.
And those are Stratasys printers there on the screen on the right there. So those are ones that Stratasys has created. Super.
So another question, how long do you think 3D printing has existed?
You want to take a guess, Bella?
Sure. Maybe like about a long time, I can see. Maybe about like 30 years or so.
You're right, you're right. So it's actually been around for over 30 years. The guy on the right, his name is Scott Crump. He's our founder at Stratasys. He invented FDM 3D printing technology. So Stratasys still creates, builds, improves 3D printers ever since the first one. You might also be wondering or asking yourself, what can you 3D print? So what types of things can you print? It's all about the materials. So you can print in plastic, ceramic, glass, metal, and even human tissue. Really, the possibilities are endless.
Super. So Kia mentioned FDM, 3D printing. FDM is the most common type of 3D printing, but there's actually 7 different types of 3D printing technologies. I'm going to talk to you about 4 of the most typical, the 4 of the types of 3D printing that you would see in the world around you. FDM, again, is the most common. Your school might have an FDM printer. Some of the local businesses might have them and run them. But there's also stereolithography printing, and that's the printing that you see come out of a clear vat of liquid resin. There's also SLS, or selective laser sintering, and SLM and DMLS are also very similar types of printing. And then polyjet technology. So it might be confusing, all of these different types of printing, but you can think of FDM as the most common and reliable. Comes out in a, stereolithography is smooth, SLS is powder, and polyjet is full color technology. So when we look at what types of technology that Stratasys provides, it's largely FDM and polyjet. We invented these 2 types of technology. As Kia mentioned, FDM is sort of like a tube of toothpaste, insofar that it melts a solid plastic filament, extrudes it layer by layer, and then it forms the part. You want to hold an FDM part up there on the camera? This guy. Yep. Hold him up. Yeah. He's FDM. There you go. And then polyjet, it deposits liquid photopolymers. It deposits those liquids like an inkjet, like a 2D printer, and it puts them down layer by layer and cures them with a UV light. Both technologies use both model and support material, and then the support material is washed off at the end. You want to hold up the polyjet part there? You see there, yeah, it's a big guy. Cool. So when you wash away support material, it allows you to have parts that move, like these on the screen. So it allows for movable parts. Pretty interesting. Good. You can take a look at those movable parts. So why don't you take a moment and, based on what we just told you, guess which technology this is. This is a 3D printed part by a school in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. It's a logo for a fake company for a product development class. But what do you think that is? Do you think that's FDM or polyjet?
It's color, so it's probably polyjet.
Very right. That is polyjet. Let's take another guess. How about this technology? FDM or polyjet?
FDM, I'm guessing.
Yep, you're very, very right.
FDM is not colorful like
no,
polyjet.
and you can see the layers in the part so that you know that they were laid down layer by layer. The white material here is the support material. That's what washes out and allows the parts to move. So you can surprise your friends when you know how to guess which 3D printing technology is which. Let's spend some more time with Kia, understanding a little bit more about where 3D printing information comes from in order for you to be able to print those parts. Kia? You're on mute if I can't hear you.
So where does 3D printable information come from? How do you turn something that's 2D, like a drawing or a sticker, into something that's 3D and then can be printed on a 3D printer? So you create what's called a computer-aided design or drawing, or a CAD file. A CAD drawing uses lines and circles to build a 3D model of just about anything, like you can see on the right here. So how can you print? First, you would create your own design or blueprint using a modeling software. You can also find one on places like Thingiverse, which we can talk a little bit about later and show you how to get there. You can upload that digital file or that CAD file that we talked about to a 3D printer, basically hitting print, kind of like you would on your printer to print your homework. Then you can watch the design come to life, being printed layer by layer through the 3D printer, eventually creating a full object, kind of like you can see in the picture here. The image of the CAD file at the top, and then the 3D printed object at the bottom. The next question you might be asking yourself is, how can you design? How can you start learning this, or how can you design something? There are a lot of really cool tools and resources out there for students, like real-world learning applications, projects, some even hands-on learning in a classroom. So there's free computer-aided design tools like Onshape, SketchUp, MakerBot Paint Shop. There's advanced tools, and then there's free 3D file sharing and downloads like Thingiverse that we talked about earlier. And there's lots and lots of online tutorials. You can check out these CAD softwares. You can give it a try. Tinkercad is really easy. Mia Bella has even given it a try. And it's a great way to explore and get started.
Yeah, I agree. So next is, where is 3D printing used? You can think of it any place.
Can you think of a place that you know that 3D printing is used?
It can be used anywhere, really. In space.
In space?
Maybe at the hospital.
At the hospital?
At your local school.
Yeah, lots of places. So let's take a little journey and see from the time 3D printing is invented to now where it's being used. And I'm going to share you a video, and I'm going to narrate it. There's no sound on this video. But here, this is Scott Crump, our founder. He's in his lab in his garage, and he is working right there on the first 3D printer. It's 1989, and he is trying to figure out how to bring real objects to life. And a lot of trial and error, a lot of scrapped ideas, but he finally gets it. And when he finally gets his first 3D printed object, it's a frog for his daughter. And that launches 3D printing around the world. That launches the ability to launch 3D printed parts into space, to put them on the International Space Station. So there's some examples of things that were launched into space that have 3D printed parts in them. There's also prototypes, launches the ability to prototype things that go into race cars. These are our race cars from McLaren that are in Formula One today with 3D printed parts. 3D printed parts become part of jigs and fixtures on the manufacturing line. They become part of medical and the way that doctors work. They save lives because they're able to practice surgery before they do it on a child. 3D printing changes the way we have objects in our life, how bikes are prototyped, how helmets. We're part of every winning race. And it's all because one guy had an idea to change the future. And you can be that guy, right? You can be part of something big. You just need to explore your ideas. Look at that smiling face of Mia there. Look at that spaceship going into space. So 30 years to get 3D printing to where it is today. But who knows where it'll even go into the future. So we'll talk to you a little bit more about some of these places that 3D printing is utilized. But 3D printing is really in almost every industry around the world. Automotive, aerospace, defense, manufacturing with jigs and fixtures and things that help manufacturers work on the manufacturing floor. Consumer products. I was talking earlier about my OtterBox phone case. OtterBox prototypes all of their phone cases on the J850, the PolyJet printer from Stratasys. So lots and lots of consumer products utilize 3D printing as part of their prototyping process. Medical. So medical, from medical devices to medical surgical planning and so on. The government, and then schools. Lots and lots of schools are using 3D printing to help students to design their parts and to learn engineering and STEM science, technology, engineering, and math aspects. So some of the places 3D printing is used might even surprise you. So here's one that might surprise you.
This feels very confined. I feel woozy. Do I look pale? I feel pale. Stop fidgeting, Mr. Lake. You mustn't draw attention to yourself. Well, I'm not very comfortable. Oh, so you can't think so highly of you, Lionel. Yeah, let's have some good here. Oh, that's better.
So while things don't talk yet off the 3D printer, 3D printing is used in movies like The Missing Link. They do stop motion animation, and they pose a puppet many, many times and record that and create a movie. So Leica Studios uses the PolyJet 3D printing to make all of the faces for stop motion animation, like the faces in the Missing Link movie. You saw that movie. It's pretty awesome, right? Pretty creative. So if you want to see 3D printing used in a way that you didn't expect it to, it's a great movie to check out. Another place that 3D printing is being used that might surprise you is the Google Arts and Culture project. You can Google it. And they're really trying to bring relics and pieces of history to life. Things that are so delicate that you might not be able to touch or see. But if we 3D print them, you can make multiple copies of it and there's no danger there. So Google Arts and Culture is really doing this to give people knowledge and to share that knowledge with people on these relics. Kia, you want to talk about Polaris?
Yeah, Polaris uses 3D printing to save money and cut down on production time. They'll use 3D printing to create tools and jigs and fixtures and all sorts of other parts that help them create everything that they do create, things like motorcycles, like you can see here, and the 3D printer in the picture too. Another industry that we've talked about that uses 3D printing is aerospace. So United Launch Alliance, it's an aerospace company. It wants to be able to send rockets to space faster and for less money. So they're using 3D printing to help them do that. Limbitless, in the healthcare industry, they provide custom prosthetics for kids that are affordable, and they try and make their dreams come true at the same time. So if anyone recognizes the picture on the screen, I'll give you a second to look at it. Let me know if it looks familiar. It's Iron Man's chest piece that was turned into a prosthetic arm for a little kid. Remember when we talked earlier about being able to 3D print some really, really cool materials like tissue? Well, a 3D printed heart helped doctors at a children's hospital figure out the best way to operate on this young girl right here, and actually ended up saving her life. So 3D printing also helps dentists. They use the scanning technology, kind of like how Google Arts and Culture scans the buildings, but this one's a much, much smaller one that can scan your teeth. It can create models for things like crowns, bridges, and braces, so it helps them work much faster too. And a lot of schools all around the country and the world, they use 3D printing too to help teach students just like you. These are some students at Boston University that are learning how to create CAD files, how to 3D print, and they're using 3D printers for a lot of their school projects. Hudson Valley Additive Manufacturing Center is in New York. They created models of an invasive species called the spotted lanternfly, which you can see right there. So that's a really good example of the polyjet technology that we talked about earlier with all the colors. And it's actually printed inside of a clear material too to help people hold it. So they use the 3D printer to print the models of the spotted lanternfly to spread awareness and help identify them since they are an invasive species.
These are really, really tiny, delicate bugs. You see the little one in the middle, that's the actual size, and then they blew them up so people can see the details. It's pretty spectacular. It's pretty amazing, right?
It is. So something you've probably all noticed going on in the world today is the COVID-19 or the coronavirus crisis. 3D printing is helping in that effort too. At Stratasys, we're sharing the CAD files for 3D printed face shields for just about anyone to print. We're taking orders from hospitals and places in need of a lot of help around the world, and we've asked our friends and partners to do that too. So together we began printing thousands of face shields each week and mailing them to hospitals, doctors, nurses, and anyone in need that's asking us. So 3D printing is helping doctors and nurses around the world stay safe and healthy. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how you can start your 3D printing journey. Certainly, as Kia just mentioned, if you already do have a 3D printer and you know how to 3D print or you can access one, you can print face shields and provide them to Stratasys to deliver to hospitals or to your local community. That's possible. We've posted all of the instructions on our website. But what if you wanted to start a little smaller than that and just start exploring 3D printing? What could you do there? So as we think about, 3D printing maybe 15 years ago, students would look at this printer and say, wow, what's that? Is that a 3D printer? That's cool. And now they're really asking, what can I make? And we're starting to see stuff like this. This is all students' work.
Yeah. So this is all students' work that they've made, starting their 3D printing journey. So what would you like to 3D print?
So start thinking about that. If you could design and print anything, because basically if you can design it, you can print it, right?
Yeah.
If you can design and print anything, what would you print? Mabel, how about you? What would you print?
I would print maybe a computer.
A computer?
A computer.
Wow.
Because you get to maybe when you scroll on your computer.
Oh, you would try the mechanism.
And I would see how that feels. Is it smooth and more like a regular computer or a 3D printer?
So you would prototype a computer and then get tactile feedback from the users of the computer before you created it. It sounds like you have a career as a product designer ahead of you. So there's lots of resources, and we've provided a resource guide to the hosts of this webinar to provide to all of the attendees, published by Stratasys to help you get started with 3D printing. You can learn more always on the stratasys.com website on our Explore section. There's lots of articles and webinars and trainings and more from myself and Kia as well if you want to hear our voices and our knowledge some more. There's also a support center that has applications. So if you're looking into a specific thing, how to create a jig or fixture or how to prototype in color, you can check those out. But most students really like cool projects and challenges. And so one of the challenges that we have open now is called Extreme Redesign. And Extreme Redesign allows you to take anything in your world and redesign it to make it better. And you submit that and you can win scholarship money, a printer for your school, t-shirts, all kinds of fun stuff. So you can check that out on grabcad.com, on stratasys.com. Your resource guide will have the links to this. And we also run other challenges throughout the year. So right now we have one with NASA on some robotic drums for space and some cool things there. So you can always check those out. If your teachers or parents are on the phone here or on the call, you can also check out the project ideas and videos we have on our site in the general stratasys.com education pages. Kia mentioned earlier that there's some great communities out there to take a look at 3D parts, to look at projects, to ask engineers and designers in the community questions. Two of those that exist are grabcad.com's community, and that's a lot of engineers and designers and professionals, and then Thingiverse. And Thingiverse has a bunch of folks that are makers, people that just sort of like the arts and crafts and figuring things out of 3D printing. Both of those are Stratasys sites, and would love for you to poke around there and check out the ideas and so on. I think you found things on there to print before as well, Miabella. And then you can always collaborate with others on GrabCAD groups. There's student groups, there's educator groups. If we have any professional engineers or designers on the call, there's groups for you and groups for SolidWorks users and so on. So there's lots and lots of resources available to you. And so before we take questions, so think about what you might have as questions and sort of summarize the call. I just want to, or the training, I just want to share with you one more message about you being the future. So take a look at this.
I'm a maker. I'm an inventor. I'm an innovator. I'm an explorer. I'm an engineer. I'm an artist. I'm an aerospace maker. I'm a maker, inventor, a designer. I'm a creator, a scientist, graduate student, lecturer, an educator. I'm an educator. I am the future.
Okay, so next, what are you? You are
The future.
Explore, invent, learn something new today.
So we want to tell you that you are the future. Explore 3D printing, invent something you've always wanted to invent, and with your time home, learn something new, try something new, explore something new.